The young and the restless spoilers in the wan morning light filtering through the tall, arched windows of the Genoa City Athletic Club, Jack Abbott found himself lingering by the polished mahogany bar long after his post-workout protein shake had been drained. The familiar hum of treadmills and the distant clink of free weights formed a comforting backdrop, but his mind was anything but at ease. Business negotiations had been grinding to a standstill at Jabot Cosmetics, and the weight of family expectations felt heavier than any barbell he'd ever hoisted. As he wiped the condensation from his glass, he couldn't have predicted that this unplanned trip to the private club, initially intended as a respite, would soon yield information more valuable than any deal he'd brokered in the boardroom. Across the room, near a quiet cluster of leather armchairs, Lauren Fenmore Baldwin and Nikki Newman had already settled into a conversation that crackled with undercurrents of urgency and unspoken alliances. Lauren's posture was taut with purpose, each graceful gesture emphasizing the gravity of her words. Nikki, ever the poised socialite, leaned in, her perfectly coiffed hair catching the light as she spoke in a hushed tone that betrayed her usually unflappable composure. Though they began their exchange in casual camaraderie, complimenting each other on recent charity work and comparing notes on favorite local wine vintages, it wasn't long before the topic shifted to weightier matters. The abrupt announcement that Michael Baldwin, once Victor Newman's strategic counsel and confidant, had tendered his resignation rocked the family's foundation. Lauren argued that Michael's departure was more than a professional pivot. It was a seismic shift that could unsettle Victor in ways none of them dared fully anticipate. Nikki countered with memories of Michael's fierce loyalty, insisting that no amount of boardroom maneuvering could sever the bonds he'd forged with Newman Enterprises, or the head of the empire himself. Jack's entrance into their midst came almost on cue, as if fate had timed their intersection. He'd overheard the tail end of Nikki's final assertion that Victor's temper was volatile enough to trigger unpredictable consequences, and chose that moment to interject. His congenial greeting concealed the ripple of surprise he felt, hearing his sister-in-law and his oldest friend discuss his father's most dangerous impulses as though they were debating next season's fashion trends was disquieting. Yet Jack was nothing if not adaptable. He slid into the conversation, offering his own insights, recounting brief encounters in the corridors of Newman Enterprises where Michael's resignation had already become gossip fodder among junior associates. Together, the three of them traced the potential fallout. Corporate insiders might seize the opening to undermine Victor's authority. Adversaries like J.T. Hellstrom could be emboldened to strike at vulnerable corners of the Newman empire, even their personal relationships. Once carefully navigated through birthdays and holiday dinners, stood to be tested by the tumult. As they spoke, the oak-paneled walls seemed to lean in, absorbing each syllable and amplifying the tension as though the very room were bracing for the storm. No sooner had they concluded that Michael's decision was the spark that would set off a chain reaction than the scene shifted to the stately farmhouse on the outskirts of Genoa City. There, in the dim glow of a single bedside lamp, Victor Newman paced the length of his private quarters, unable to find solace even in solitude. His face, usually the mask of implacable calm, betrayed sleepless nights, dark circles hollowed his eyes, and the nervous tap of his expensive leather shoes echoed like a metronome counting down to confrontation. Each thud against the Persian rug mirrored the unrest in his mind. The resignation of his most trusted advisor was not merely a professional slight, it felt like personal betrayal. Victor's thoughts spun through memories of legal victories and crisis management sessions, each one a testament to Michael's unwavering competence, and he ground his teeth at the sense of abandonment. He could almost hear the theme from the opera of his life, a song of triumph and tragedy, playing in an endless loop behind his skull. Determined to regain control, he drafted terse memos, called emergency meetings with Newman Enterprises Executive Committee, and summoned legal counsel for a midnight session, all before the first light of dawn broke across his acres of manicured lawn. As the city awoke, the echoes of that nocturnal turmoil reached back to Jack, Lauren, and Nikki. Their strategic huddle in the athletic club suddenly carried more weight, transmuting from speculative discussion to urgent preparation. Each of them took calculated steps, Jack began drafting contingency plans at Jabot, contemplating alliances with unexpected partners. Lauren, leveraging her legal expertise, reviewed clauses in Michael's contract to chart any leverage Victor might still wield. Nikki, ever the social tactician, dispatched discreet inquiries to her network of donors and influencers, seeking to anticipate how public sentiment might sway in the wake of the fallout. Even as they acted, however, an unspoken question lingered: how would Michael himself respond when confronted with the inevitable fallout? Would he stand firm in his principles, or would Victor's wrath compel him to reconsider, even as alliances shifted and loyalties splintered all around him? Throughout it all, the unmistakable strains of a haunting melody threaded its way into every pivotal moment. The producer's choice to underscore key scenes with a variation of the Nadia theme. Originally the soap's signature song, was no mere callback for nostalgic viewers. It functioned almost as a Greek chorus, a musical guide that heightened the drama and reminded them that history was repeating itself, loyalty tested, power wrested, and loved ones caught in the crossfire. In the silence between conversations and beneath the hum of corporate machinations, that theme whispered of the soap's enduring promise. That each generation must grapple anew with the same primal struggles of love, betrayal, and redemption. And so, as Genoa City's elite readied themselves for the next act, they did so with the knowledge that the opera of their lives would continue, babel and unrelenting, carried forward on the wings of that timeless melody. By the time night fell once more, alliances had been tentatively reforged, strategies quietly deployed, and the stage meticulously set for the confrontation that everyone knew was coming: Victor against Michael, Jack and Lauren and Nikki standing on one side, and perhaps others whose names had yet to be spoken on the opposite. The Genoa City Athletic Club, the farmhouse, the boardrooms of Jabot and Newman Enterprises, each location had played its part in this unfolding drama. Yet it was the unbroken thread of human resolve, the determination to navigate shifting loyalties, the courage to face down formidable adversaries, and the willingness to embrace whatever the dawn might bring, that truly bound the story together. In this world of opulent facades and hidden ambitions, they had learned that power was nothing without purpose, and purpose without love was a hollow victory. And as the final note of the Nadia theme faded into the night, all that remained was the hush of anticipation, for in Genoa City, the next crescendo was always just a heartbeat away. Victor Newman stands as the undisputed sovereign of Genoa City, Wisconsin, an empire builder whose name has become synonymous with power, ambition, and unshakable resolve. Decades ago, Catherine Chancellor, the indomitable matriarch of Chancellor Industries, saw in him a spark that could reignite her family's fortunes. 45 years have passed since she first entrusted him with the helm of her corporate legacy, and in that time, Victor has surpassed every expectation. He did not merely run Chancellor Industries, he transformed it into the cornerstone of his own burgeoning empire, reshaping the economic and social landscape of the city. The nickname Mustache, once a playful jibe used by Jack Abbott in their early days of rivalry and camaraderie, became an emblem of the Newman family's ascent, a mark of both endearment and respect for the man who would brook no challenge. Even now, the memory of Catherine's mentorship lingers like an echo in the marble halls of Newman Enterprises, a reminder that Victor's greatness was nurtured by forces greater than his own iron will. From the very beginning of his journey, Victor's relationships have been entwined with both business and personal imperatives. None more so than his bond with Michael Baldwin, LeBlanc, as Victor affectionately dubbed him, in recognition of his smooth counsel and unwavering loyalty. Over the course of more than 3 decades on the show, Michael's role evolved from a trusted legal advisor to something closer to a consigliere. A counselor whose guidance shaped each critical decision Victor made, whether in the boardroom or behind closed doors. Their partnership yielded a string of legal triumphs, poster-child crisis interventions, and landmark mergers that fortified Victor's dominion. Yet alliances forged in ambition can warp under the weight of expectation and sacrifice. Lauren Fenmore Baldwin witnessed firsthand the relentless pressure Victor exerted on Michael, pressures that bent even the most steadfast spirit. Lauren, whose compassion and moral compass often steered her toward empathy, implored Michael to sever his ties with Victor after he endured the humiliation and danger of foreign imprisonment. To Lauren, loyalty was a code of honor, not a tool for Victor's strategic leverage. Yet Michael, ever pragmatic, rationalized his ordeal as part of a grand design: victory at any cost, emotional wounds be damned. Despite his rationalizations, the continuous strain left scars deeper than any courtroom defeat. Year after year, Michael sacrificed his personal happiness on the altar of Victor's ambition, fractured friendships, lost romances, and a sense of self that gradually eroded under the weight of his mentor's expectations. What had once been a partnership of equals became a one-sided covenant. Victor, for all his brilliance, seldom paused to consider the collateral damage of his machinations. Each triumph in corporate warfare was paid for in the currency of human loyalty and trust. When Michael's conscience finally rebelled, when the emotional toll became too steep a price to pay, he made the fateful decision to break free. He tendered his resignation under the cover of a tightly managed press release, choosing to walk away rather than endure another season of calculated power plays. Remarkably, he did so without betraying his mentor's secrets. An act of defiance that spoke volumes about his integrity even as it severed the last of his formal ties to the Newman dynasty. The months leading to this climactic rupture unfolded with the inevitability of a midsummer storm that gathers strength silently before unleashing its fury. Victor's reaction was swift and unyielding. He called emergency board meetings, enacted last-minute contractual clauses, and flooded the Newman Enterprises newsfeed with counternarratives to control the public perception of Michael's departure. Yet the sunlight of goodwill and mutual respect that once illuminated their relationship failed to penetrate the cloud of betrayal and wounded pride. Lauren watched helplessly as Victor's wrath echoed through the corridors of power, each directive more uncompromising than the last. Meanwhile, Jack Abbott, whose own alliances with Victor have swung between bitter rivalry and wary collaboration over the years, saw in Michael's defection both a strategic opportunity and a moral reckoning. Quietly, Jack began to extend an olive branch, envisioning a partnership that could blend Michael's legal prowess with Jabot's marketing savvy to challenge Newman Enterprises on multiple fronts. As Genoa City braces for the aftermath, speculation runs rampant about Michael's next move. Will he retreat from the public eye, seeking solace and restoration in the quiet sanctuaries of his personal life? Or will he wield his hard-earned expertise in the service of Jack Abbott, forging a new alliance that could recalibrate the balance of power? Whatever path he chooses, one truth remains certain: the relationship between Victor and Michael has been irrevocably altered. The saga of loyalty, ambition, and emotional sacrifice that has spanned more than 3 decades will crescendo into a new chapter, one in which Michael must redefine his identity beyond the shadow of Newman Enterprises. And for Victor, the loss of his most trusted consigliere will test not only his business acumen but the very core of his leadership. Can the undisputed head of Genoa City survive a blow from the one man he once believed he could never lose? Only time will reveal whether this schism heralds a renaissance of independence or the dawn of a tempest that neither man can fully control. In the hushed stillness of Victor Newman's expansive private study, the air itself seemed to quiver with the weight of unspoken expectations. Michael Baldwin stood before the immense desk, its surface gleaming under the glow of a single banker's lamp, clutching a document that felt heavier than any legal brief he had ever submitted. It was neither a case file nor a contract. It was a simple request, born of respect and a lifetime of loyalty. He was asking the man he had come to regard as a surrogate father for a modest favor, something that would cost Victor nothing: no fees, no concessions, not even the slightest dent in his formidable empire. Yet when he uttered those carefully measured words, appealing to the bond they had forged through decades of shared battles and triumphs, Victor's response was as swift as it was brutal. He did not hesitate, he did not soften, and he certainly did not acknowledge the depth of Michael's sacrifice. Instead, he dismissed the request with a frosty indifference that bordered on contempt, as though Michael's very presence in the room were an imposition rather than a testament to a partnership built on mutual trust. The sting of rejection burned hot in Michael's chest, but it was the manner of Victor's refusal that cut deepest. There was no gentle explanation, no empathetic nod, only the cold decree that Michael's proposal was beneath consideration. It was, Michael thought bitterly, the epitome of rudeness. Worse still was the unspoken insult that lingered in the space between them. Victor's glare carried an unambiguous message, as if Michael's entreaty marked him a fool, an obstinate old donkey lumbering where he had no right to tread. That image, of a stubborn beast, braying uselessly in the face of true power, flickered in Michael's mind, a cruel caricature that underscored the chasm growing between mentor and protégé. In that moment, all the late nights spent strategizing over mergers, all the nights Michael had stood by Victor's side in the courtroom, felt erased by a single, dismissive wave of his hand. Even as Michael reeled from the shock, Victor offered no olive branch, no compromise, no half measure to ease the rupture. The primal dance of negotiation that had defined their relationship for years, where Victor would wield his iron will and Michael would counter with reasoned counsel, had ended without the usual flourish of give and take. Had Victor been inclined, he might have suggested a pathway forward. Perhaps Michael could take on a promising junior associate, training a protégé who would shoulder future burdens alongside him. Such a gesture would have softened the blow, preserving the veneer of respect even as it marked an official passing of the torch. Yet no such thought crossed Victor's mind. Instead, he simply turned away, as though Michael's departure were an inevitability rather than a loss to be mourned. What tormented Michael most was the cruel irony that he understood far too well the limitations of any replacement Victor might appoint. He knew that the person chosen to fill his shoes, be it the talented young attorney who had shown promise in the Aristotle Dumas affair or another hand-picked consigliere, could handle the tactical skirmishes. The high-stakes courtroom battles, the relentless jousting with Jack Abbott, the delicate dance around outside counsel. But what no substitute could replicate was the depth of history he shared with Victor, the late-night strategy sessions in dimly lit offices, the personal interventions to save Victor's reputation, the counsel offered in moments of private vulnerability. Without that shared history, any new ally would be ill-equipped to navigate the emotional labyrinth that underpinned every critical decision. Yet Michael's protests fell on deaf ears, and the die was cast. In the stillness that followed, Michael realized that no more repairs remained to be made. The months, indeed, the years, of painstaking trust-building that had brought him to this precipice could not withstand Victor's abrupt withdrawal of support. With a mixture of sorrow and resolve, he uttered his final farewell, his voice steadier than he felt. The document he had once held with hopeful anticipation now lay folded in his pocket, a silent testament to both his devotion and his heartbreak. Turning away from the desk that had witnessed their greatest victories, Michael stepped into the corridor beyond, the sterile, echoing hallway that led him out of Newman Enterprises forever. Though his departure was marked by shock and disappointment, it also carried the seed of something new, independence forged in adversity, the uncertain promise of a life lived beyond the shadow of the empire that had once defined him. And as he crossed the threshold into the waiting world, Michael Baldwin walked away not as a defeated subordinate, but as a man irrevocably changed, shattered, yes, but also free.